I'm going to offer two choices on the thimbles. The thimble that I showed in the first video is the brass one that has the wider flare after the thimble itself, and it's a little bit, just a little fatter, wider, I guess you would call it. And some people like the look of that. And the other one is really all I've done is slimmed it down, and that one would go on like that. This is the easier one to inlet, and that's a reason in itself to choose this one if you're not as handy in inlaying. But there's not a lot of difference in the two. Some people like the look of the thinner one. One thing that will help is when you're rounding the side panel here itself. It's easier to round because you can take a little more wood off of the two sides here. But we're going to put this one in anyway and show you how to do it, and then you can make your choice. So what you're going to do, you're going to put a screw up through the bottom and just stop the threads in here. And that's just so that, be sure that the hole is going to line up on the other side. And then we'll take a pencil, just as we did the other one, and keeping the pencil as straight up as we can, we're going to mark the outline, mark the front. And again, we're going to put a little mark where those rings are on both sides, because we're going to have to put a little tiny needle file in there to make those fit in. Now we won't bother going any further than here, than this part here, until we get this inlet down in where this will be touching, and then we will outline that. So that's our job there right now. Take this off, and the best way to do that is to take your chisel and make your first cut on the very front of it. We're going to take this small straight chisel, we're going to mark that very first edge. My knife in that and make that a little bit deeper. Now I'll just take this. And just kind of slice that down there. You may break through on the bottom, but it doesn't matter. That thimble's got to go all the way through. And leave just a little bit of a lip there. Alright. Now the best way to to take these sides down. If you can see, it doesn't have to go down much. That'll almost fit in. So we're going to take the panel off, and we'll file down on both sides with a very fine file. Now I have 3 files that I'm going to be using on this. One is the flat file for the edge. Then I have this little needle file, very, very fine, and that will be for those little points. And then I have this half round file that will be for where the wedding band was. Now I'll take this panel out, put it up on its side, and the first thing I'm going to do is to do those little curves where the wedding band is. And it's very, very little. Doesn't take hardly anything to get those in. Actually, they'll press in a little bit, but again, we don't want to split. We don't want to split that panel. Just lay this in there. Oh, that looks good. I overdid that one a little bit, but I guess we'll have to live with that. Not that bad. Now we'll put where those little rings are on each side of the wedding band. Those are not very deep. They're just takes a few strokes. You could put some inletting black on that and press it in there before you did this too. Then you'd be more exact. If we're not exactly on, we may do that. That back. Let's stick in there. Clamp. Now we just lay that on there. You can see how that fits in there quite nicely. I'm going to mark just this small part right here. Just enough to get that corner down in so that it will lay flat. And I think we can do that with that little file. I don't know, quite a bit there. I've got a file over there. It's a little coarser than this one, but we'll see how far this one gets us. This is the part I'm doing right here. This file's fairly new, so it cuts pretty quick, even though it's fine. try that again. This is one of the jobs you really cannot be in a hurry. There. That went right down. Right down, touch it. Now we can get a good, accurate line on there. Now you could on this tab, you could leave it square on the end too. Or you can curve it around, or you can make more of a point. Again, you're building yourself a custom rifle here, and you can do anything you want. Alright, now we're going to take that out. But I think while we've got it out, I'm going to put some inletting black on the underside. This time when I put it in, I'm going to put that screw back in to make sure that we get it exactly in the right spot. I probably should have done that the last time too. But put those little marks on the side. It pretty much centers itself. That went in quite easily. Check that pencil line again. Looks good. It doesn't have to go much lower. Screw out. Yeah, see what we got. Alright, it is touching in the front right there, and I'm going to take that out. I'm going to try not to break through on that, but I probably will. Really doesn't matter. And then if you decide that you want to glass bed it, and I do recommend that for the hunting rifles, but it's up to you. Either way, you should do a nice neat job of inletting. Don't rely on the glass bedding to fill any gaps on you. If that happens, it happens, but we try not to. Good. That little ring is just touching a bit. Get the other side, see that? You can see how often I swap sides. That's why it's advantageous to have a bench out in the center of your floor so you can walk around it, get on both sides. Now when I put this in, when I do the other side, you'll be able to see it better. I'm leaving a crack of light. And the light, the chisel squashes that wood over. Right now it looks like that cut is right on the line, but when I put the chisel in, there was a little crack of light there, and it squashed the wood over so that after your inlet is in, you can wet it. I'm going to get a smaller one. It's just a little bit too wide. Get my little crack of light. This is just a palm chisel, so I have to be a little delicate with it. That we got done. Those palm chisels are a lot cheaper than the full-size chisel, and you can get more of them and get the radiuses that you need without spending more than necessary. Now I'm going to use this knife here to bring that line down. You could plunge cut this. And I'm not pulling that with my right hand. I'm pushing that with my thumb on my left hand. It gives me much more control over it. Now I'll take a chisel. Even though that's a long straight line, I don't like to use too long a chisel on it. You've got to be a little bit gentle right here because you don't have much wood to work with. I'm tipping it a little bit so that the corner goes down in there. We can be a little more aggressive tapping in on the two edges, but when we go across on that radius right here, you have to remember that channel underneath there was running right through here, so it's not going to be much wood left there when we get that all cut in. You don't want to collapse that in. I know I keep saying some of the same things over and over again, but that is very, very important. Years and years ago, probably 25 years ago, when I took the course down at the University of Western Kentucky, which was the one that was sponsored like through the NMLRA. They still have the school down there, great school. And we went out for dinner in a group, and we had a big table. There was like 10 of us sitting at the table, and Wallace Gustler had a student in his class at the time that was a young lady, and she was probably 20 years old. And one of the other people at the table was an older man. probably as old as I am right now. He may not have been as old as I am right now, but she was jabbering away quite fast. And he finally said, and he was from the South, so he had a real strong Southern drawl. He says, "Young lady." And there was a long pause. He says, "You hear how slow I talk? Well, that's just how fast I listen." And he says, "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." And I understand it completely now, because I listen about as fast as I'm talking right now. I thought that was funny. I never forgot that. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm going all the way around the edge and taking that first cut right up against my line and pretty much going across the grain. And you can see I'm just pushing it. This is just one of these little farm chisels. But if you get them sharp enough, they push along very nicely. Once I get that edge cut, I'll have to recut that edge a little. You can see there's not much wood right here between the hole and the here, and I'm trying to keep from breaking through, but this area is so thin. It's pretty hard. Deepen that cut. I gotta use my other knife for that. Must be getting awful close to that hole. But it's only in the middle. If we break through, it'll just be in the very middle, and that doesn't make a lot of difference. If you don't get nice, clean curls like that coming off your gouge, you know you're not sharp enough. A little black one right there. Pull that off. Now, double check that thimble. Oh, look at that. Look at that. I don't think that's near deep enough, but I don't want to go deeper than I have to, so I'm going to try the loading stick. I think I'm being a little optimistic here. We'll see. Oh, by golly. Just a little bit more. That went in nicely. That went in very nicely. Let's see where it's touching. Touching on both corners right there. It's touching all the way to the bottom. On that side. A little bit on this bottom. Got to be very careful. If you slip and go too deep, you'll able to touch the barrel with your chisel, and then you're going to have to go back and sharpen it. Now I'm going to try her again. I'm going to re-blacken that edge. Somehow I've managed to keep that black off me. The day ain't over yet. And one of the things that I do here when I'm cutting these moldings in with the machine, I run the loading stick hole in. This runs in 100 thousandths deeper here than it does out at the muzzle end. And then these side cuts I make, I only bring them up this far. Now eventually they're going to come all the way up to here. All the way up to here. But if I've done them in the past that way, but it leaves so little wood in here, when you're pressing this in, it has a tendency to be so weak, you'll be able to crack it in there. So I'm going to leave these wide like that down here until we get this all in and finished. Then we can take and we can do this much with a gouge. There's nothing to it. So that's, if you're wondering why I stopped way back here, that's the reason. And we're looking pretty good there right now. That loading stick ought to slide in there pretty slick right now. Yeah. You can see how little space we've got to work with there. The loading stick goes in, goes all the way back to that, to this little bump here. If you take that bump off, you can go all the way back to that screw, which is the back screw in the frizzen. But you can see it breaks through into the mortise where the frizzen plate is. So that's up to you. You can do that or not do it. I like to leave it there myself. But either way, it works. But this has got to go just a shade deeper. See where it's hitting, and it's hitting in the same spot. So I think I'll pull this out so I can get my little file on the edge of that. You can see where it's touching. It's touching right there. And it's touching the same place on the other side. So we'll just take this. It's touching a little right there. That's in that wedding band. Okay. We'll check that one out. Clamp back on. This time we'll put a clamp on here to hold that down tight. You can see where those little rings are. That just guides it right in. Now, she's down in the front. Loading stick goes in, and the little tab is down here. It's down good. We can take a little off inside that loading stick hole in here. Once we get this bolted down, we put the screw in and pull this down good and tight so we know exactly where it is. And then of course that screw will come up through and be blocking this hole. So we'll cut it off a little first so we can get this in, and then we put this round rat tail file in, and you can feel it's the back edge of that, the metal on the end of the thimble here that is touching, and we can file that down, and then the loading stick will go in even easier. And then the last choice would be, if we had to, is to slim the stick down a little bit more. I like to leave them as big as possible, but as you can see, that we don't have much room to work with here. And when this stick goes in here, it's got to go down between the barrels. So between the two, that'll give us that space we need. But it's very, very close working in there. Now, I've done this on the other one, so I won't bother doing this on the video, but we just take our gouge and finish this piece of molding in here, and we would keep it off the edge about like that, and then it would end about there. So all this would come down and join with this, and this side would do the same thing. We would keep that same little edge right up there like that, and this would end over here right opposite this one. And then this piece here, I would suggest putting a molding on here and even run it down a little bit further than you normally would, just to keep as much wood there as possible. And molding wood there. I've done this on the other one, and you'll see while we're working on that one. I just wanted to do this one with the narrower, I guess you'd call that a thumbnail or whatever, tang. And this is a little easier to inlet, this one, than the other one. And I like it just as well. Some people like the other one better, but it's kind of a toss-up. And but anyway, the other one will show how the other one works. And the other one I glass bedded. This one can be left just the way it is. There's no need to glass bed it. It's fitting absolutely perfect. In fact, when you're putting the finish on, you've got to make sure you don't put too much inside the mortise itself, or it'll make it too tight. And if you get too much in there, once this is all slimmed down and you press that down in, it's going to split. So if you don't glass bed it, just be careful when you're putting that back in. Scrape out any excess sealer that's in there. But for now, we're going to call it a good job. Now you can pat yourself in the back.